Have you ever wondered why? Just when everything is going right in your life, something in you suddenly pulls away? You ghost that promising date. You ignore that job application. You oversleep on the day of your big pitch. You binge Netflix instead of making that move that could change everything. It's not coincidence. It's not bad luck. It's self-sabotage. Welcome to BrainTrap TV. Today, we're diving into the hidden war happening inside millions of people around the world. People who seem like they've got it together on the outside, but are slowly destroying their own chances from the inside. Why do we do this? Why do we sabotage the very success we claim to want? This is deeper than procrastination. It's older than your to-do list. And it might just be rooted in fear, trauma, and a distorted idea of what we think we deserve. We all carry wounds. And sometimes, without meaning to, we protect those wounds by sabotaging our progress. But here at BrainTrap TV, we believe in turning that pattern into power. In this video, we're going to uncover the psychology behind self-sabotage, explore real-life examples of people who overcame it, and give you powerful tools to break free from this destructive cycle. Because the only thing standing between you and everything you've ever wanted might be a belief you didn't even know you had. Let's begin. You wake up one morning with that familiar feeling. Today is the day. You're going to tackle your goals, show up for yourself, finally break through the ceiling you've been trapped under for what feels like years. You stretch, maybe even smile, and as the minutes pass, the hope quietly begins to fade. An hour in, and you're scrolling. Another hour, and you're making excuses. By lunchtime, you've already abandoned the list of things you swore you'd get done. It doesn't feel like a big deal at first. It's just one day, right? But what if that one day has happened over and over again? What if this isn't just laziness, or poor time management, or even burnout? What if this is self-sabotage? And what if it's not a bug in your system, but a feature? You see, self-sabotage isn't just about failing to act. It's about fear, raw, unspoken fear that lives under the surface of ambition. It's the shadow side of desire, the silent voice that whispers, "This is too much," or worse, "You're not enough." So we retreat. We create distractions, conflicts, excuses, and they're not random. They're strategic, designed to protect us from something we haven't even admitted to ourselves. Sometimes, we're not afraid of failure. We're afraid of what success might ask of us. Think about that. If you succeed, the pressure rises. The stakes get higher. The image you built for yourself gets tested. You become more visible, more vulnerable, more exposed. And if you're carrying the belief that you're not worthy, that visibility can feel like a threat. So you hide, and the sabotage begins. Real self-sabotage doesn't always look dramatic. It looks like small, consistent acts of betrayal against your future self. It's not showing up, not sending the email, canceling that important meeting, staying in the wrong relationship, eating the wrong things, saying maybe later to the one thing that could change your life. And often, we mask these decisions in language that feels mature. I'm just waiting for the right time. I don't want to rush into anything. It's not about money for me. But dig a little deeper, and those words are soaked in fear. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus had been dreaming about launching his business for years. He had everything lined up, funding, a solid idea, even a small team of friends who believed in him. But every time launch day came close, something went wrong. His designers suddenly quit. He couldn't find the right words for his landing page. The logo didn't feel right. There was always something. He didn't realize it at first, but Marcus wasn't just postponing his dream. He was protecting his identity. The dream was safe as long as it stayed a dream. But if he launched and failed, then the fantasy would die. And worse, he might have to face the idea that he wasn't who he thought he was. So, Marcus kept pushing the date. Not because he didn't believe in the business, but because he didn't believe in himself. And that's the core wound behind so much sabotage, disbelief in self. It usually begins early. Maybe you were told you weren't smart enough. So now, when you're finally in a space to prove that wrong, you panic. Maybe you were always the messy one. So even when life starts to feel organized, you disrupt it because chaos feels more honest than success. These patterns get carved deep, and unless we face them, we'll live in loops. Another launch pushed back, another relationship broken off, another day, another promise to yourself, broken quietly, invisibly. But here's the twist. Most people don't sabotage because they want to fail. They sabotage because they're trying to stay safe. It's not destruction, it's self-preservation. If failure is inevitable in your mind, at least if you sabotage yourself, you're in control of the loss. It's familiar, it's expected, it hurts less. And when people say things like, "You're just afraid of success," it sounds silly. How could someone be afraid of getting what they want? But that's not what success really is. Success is change. Success is pressure. Success is losing the comfort of old excuses. And when your identity has been built around struggle, rising feels like betrayal. Who are you without your wounds? Who are you when you stop playing small? That's the real fear. Let's look at Sarah's story. Sarah was a top student in psychology, brilliant, intuitive, and admired by professors. But every time she got close to applying for PhDs or internships, she'd freeze. She'd convince herself she wasn't ready, that someone else deserved it more, that she hadn't done enough. She told everyone it was about timing, about personal issues, about wanting to wait. But the truth was darker. Sarah's mother had spent her whole life telling her not to aim too high, that people like them didn't get those kinds of opportunities, that the world was cruel, and Sarah would be eaten alive. Sarah internalized that fear. And so, even as doors opened, she couldn't walk through them. Not because she lacked the talent, but because she believed she lacked the right. So she closed them herself, quietly, gently, with a soft, sad smile. That's how sabotage works. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It doesn't destroy overnight. It erodes. But here's the light in all this darkness. If you can see the pattern, you can change it. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not unmotivated. You are protecting yourself in the only way you knew how. But it's time to learn a new way. Because if you're the one who's been holding yourself back, that also means you're the one with the power to set yourself free. If you've ever caught yourself making the same mistake again and again, even after swearing you'd never do it again, welcome to the hidden world of psychological patterns. These are the invisible blueprints we live by. And the worst part? We don't even realize they're running the show. Self-sabotage isn't always obvious. It often wears a disguise. It can look like perfectionism, like needing everything to be just right before you take a single step forward. It can look like procrastination, convincing yourself you'll start tomorrow, and then again the next day, and then the day after that. It can look like burnout, where you work yourself into exhaustion just to prove you're worthy, only to collapse right when it matters most. But these behaviors aren't the root of the problem. They're the symptoms. What lies underneath is more complicated, more fragile, and far more human. At the heart of sabotage is a deep question. Do I really deserve this? And for many of us, the answer has been no for far too long. Let me tell you about Javier, a quiet, brilliant man who worked in corporate sales. For 10 years, he was the backbone of his team. Everyone knew he deserved a promotion. But every time a leadership opportunity came up, Javier would accidentally miss the deadline. He'd find small, almost unnoticeable ways to make sure someone else got the role. No one understood it. He was talented. He was loved. But inside, Javier carried a voice from his childhood, his father's voice, telling him that success makes people arrogant. That wanting more meant you weren't grateful. So Javier punished his ambition. He buried it. He betrayed it, all to stay loyal to a belief that wasn't even his. That's how sabotage works. It doesn't always come from weakness. Sometimes it comes from loyalty to pain, from loyalty to the people who told us we were too much or not enough, from a desire to stay small because small was safe, because small was familiar. Our minds are built to protect us, but the same instincts that once kept us safe can now keep us stuck. And that's the paradox of healing. We have to unlearn the protection that's no longer serving us. Now, let's talk about fear. Not the fear that screams in emergencies, but the quiet, invisible fear that whispers, "Don't try too hard. Don't shine too bright. Don't stand out." This fear shows up when you're about to post something vulnerable, when you're about to say yes to something that scares you in a good way, when you're on the edge of something new, and suddenly, you pull back. You tell yourself it's intuition, or timing, or gut feeling, but often, it's just fear wearing a different outfit. And fear isn't always loud. It can be subtle. It can feel logical. It can convince you that caution is wisdom, that waiting is maturity, that silence is strength. But sometimes, silence is just fear dressed as discipline. Self-sabotage thrives in silence. When we don't talk about it, when we don't name it, it gets stronger. But the moment we start to say, "Wait, maybe I'm scared," something shifts. Because honesty cracks the pattern. Vulnerability breaks the cycle. Let me introduce you to Nia, a poet, a dreamer, someone who had notebooks full of breathtaking writing. Her friends begged her to publish, but every time she got close to submitting her work, she froze. Why? Because for Nia, writing wasn't just art, it was identity. And putting that identity in front of the world meant risking rejection. She once said, "If I never try, I'll never fail. But if I try and they hate it, what am I then?" That's the real cost of sabotage. Not just missed opportunities, but missed identities. Missed versions of who we could have been if we weren't so scared of being seen. There's an old saying, people don't fear failure. They fear being seen failing. That's the truth. So many of us would rather disappear than risk being witnessed in our struggle. We'd rather quit before the try than be judged for not being perfect. But here's the deeper truth. If you never allow yourself to be seen, you also never allow yourself to be loved. You never allow yourself to be helped. You never allow yourself to be truly known. And healing can't happen in hiding. When we start to see our sabotage not as something shameful, but as something protective, everything changes. You're not broken. You're scared. You're not lazy. You're overwhelmed. You're not a failure. You're in pain. But pain is not the end of the story. It's just the beginning of awareness. And awareness is where change begins. If we can learn to sit with our fear instead of fighting it. If we can look at our patterns not with judgment, but with curiosity. If we can say, maybe this isn't working anymore, and maybe I'm ready for something better, then we open the door to something powerful, something real, something free. The opposite of sabotage isn't success. It's alignment. It's living in a way that matches your values. It's saying no when you mean no. It's showing up when you want to disappear. It's being honest when lying would feel safer. And alignment doesn't come from willpower. It comes from healing. You don't need to push yourself harder. You need to understand yourself deeper. Because when you know where your fear is coming from, you don't have to obey it. You can thank it for trying to protect you, and then choose something new. So take a breath. Look at your life. Where are you holding back? Where are you hiding? Where are you telling yourself, not yet, when deep down you know, it's time? This isn't about forcing yourself to be someone else. It's about finally giving yourself permission to be who you already are. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be present. It needs your story, your truth, your voice, and no one else can bring that but you. Sometimes, the most painful realization isn't that others have failed us. It's that we've betrayed ourselves, quietly, repeatedly, and without even noticing. That's the cruel brilliance of self-sabotage. It wears our face, it speaks with our voice, and it convinces us that stepping back is safety, that silence is smart, and that invisibility is power. But deep down, we know the truth. We know there's a life on the other side of fear. We've tasted it in moments, those rare seconds of clarity when we dare to believe we're enough. But belief is fleeting when you've lived in self-doubt for too long. The ground under your feet starts to feel like sand, and every step forward feels like it might sink you deeper. Maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe you've built a routine out of playing small, not because you want to, but because the risk of standing tall feels unbearable. Maybe you've convinced yourself that you're just being realistic, that dreaming is for other people, that confidence is for someone louder, smarter, better. But let's pause for a second and ask, where did that story come from? Most of us don't wake up one day and decide to limit ourselves. The cage we live in wasn't built overnight. It was built word by word, experience by experience, sometimes by the people who loved us most. A teacher who told you not to aim too high. A parent who only celebrated your success when it came without flaws. A friend who mocked your ideas, so you stopped sharing them. And little by little, you started to internalize the message. Be careful. Don't get hurt. Don't try too hard. And now, you find yourself walking through life like a ghost of the person you could be. There's a term psychologists use, learned helplessness. It's the idea that if you experience failure or rejection enough times, you eventually stop trying, even when success is possible. You don't even test the door. You assume it's locked. But what if it isn't? What if every time you said, "I can't," it wasn't truth, it was memory? Let me share a story. A man named Derek spent his 20s in a state of quiet desperation. He had a degree, he had ideas, he even had moments of brilliance. But every time an opportunity showed up, he found a way to dodge it. "I'm not ready," he'd say. "It's not the right time." He told himself he was being wise, patient, strategic. But underneath that mask was a terrified child, still carrying the humiliation of a high school debate where he froze on stage and everyone laughed. That moment lasted 2 minutes, but it wrote a script that played on loop for 15 years. Until one day, he missed out on a job he dreamed of. He cried alone in his car for an hour, not because someone rejected him, but because he realized he had rejected himself again. That was his turning point. He started therapy. He began journaling every fear that crossed his mind and challenging it. He forced himself to speak in small meetings, even if his voice shook. And slowly, the memory lost its power. The script rewrote itself. Because here's the truth, self-sabotage is not your enemy. It's a wounded protector. It's the part of you that learned how to survive by hiding. The part that thinks playing small will keep you safe. The part that believes failure is fatal. But you're not surviving anymore. You're evolving. You don't need to be protected from your own potential. You need to be introduced to it. Yes, growth is painful. Yes, healing is uncomfortable. Yes, it's easier to stay the same. But what's easy now becomes hard later. And what's hard now, what feels like stretching, stumbling, and soul-searching, becomes freedom. Freedom to try. Freedom to fail. Freedom to be seen. So, ask yourself, what am I protecting by holding back? Your pride? Your comfort? Your past? And what are you sacrificing in return? Because the price of self-sabotage isn't just unfulfilled dreams. It's disconnection. It's regret. It's the slow erosion of identity until one day, you don't even recognize your own reflection. You weren't born to shrink. You were born to shine. And the only thing standing between who you are and who you could be is the story you keep telling yourself. Change the story. Change the outcome. This isn't easy, but it's possible. If you've ever watched someone live a life that feels aligned, authentic, and bold, don't envy them. Learn from them. Because chances are, they've stood exactly where you are now. They've battled the same demons. They felt the same fear. And they moved anyway. That's all courage really is. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to be ruled by it. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be faithful to the version of you that's still waiting to be realized. So don't wait for permission. Don't wait for perfection. And don't wait for the fear to disappear. Move with it. Speak through it. Act in spite of it. You might shake. You might stutter. You might fall. But you'll rise. And in rising, you'll teach every part of you that's still scared that you are stronger than your history. That you are not defined by your wounds. That you are worthy. Not when you succeed. Not when you're flawless. But right now, as you are. Because growth begins the moment you stop running from yourself and start running toward who you're meant to be. You've made it this far, and that alone says something powerful. Not just that you're curious, but that somewhere inside you, a voice is whispering, "There's more for me than this." And you're right, there is. But the change you seek won't come from another video, another quote, or another fleeting burst of motivation. It will come when you decide, really decide, that your old story no longer fits the life you're meant to live. We all have battles. We all carry wounds. But you don't have to be defined by them. You can rewrite the ending. You can choose the next chapter. And you can do it scared, imperfect, uncertain, but free. This is BrainTrap TV, where we don't just ask questions, we uncover the answers hiding in the shadows. If something in you shifted today, hold on to it. Feed it. Follow it. Because it just might lead you home to yourself. Until next time, stay awake, stay brave, and never stop searching. Your mind is a maze. Let's find the way out together.